The late afternoon sun spilled across the quiet suburban streets as Derrick Miller adjusted his grip on the steering wheel. Driving was never simple for him. Every journey required extra effort. Derrick lived with a physical disability that affected his legs, making it impossible to walk unaided. His car had been fitted with adaptive hand controls, a system he had mastered with patience and determination. Behind the wheel, he found freedom, the ability to move through the world on his own terms, without pity or assistance. That day, he was on his way home from work, a folder of client papers on the passenger seat, and his favorite jazz station humming through the speakers. For Derrick, it was an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day he appreciated most. No appointments, no emergencies, just routine. But ordinary days, he would soon learn, could turn extraordinary in the worst of ways. As he approached a traffic light, red glow washing over his windshield, Derrick noticed flashing blue lights in his rearview mirror. His chest tightened instinctively. He wasn't speeding, he hadn't missed a signal. Yet the patrol car pulled up behind him, siren blaring for him to stop. Derrick sighed, signaling to the curb and pulling over smoothly. Encounters with police always carried a weight of uncertainty, but he reminded himself he had nothing to hide. The officer who emerged from the cruiser was tall, broad-shouldered, and walked with the kind of swagger that spoke less of professionalism and more of ownership. His name, Officer Brad Thompson, was etched across the metal nameplate on his chest. He approached Derrick's car with slow, deliberate steps, sunglasses hiding his eyes. Derrick rolled down his window, offering a polite nod. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" Thompson didn't answer right away. Instead, he circled the car, peering inside as if Derrick were already guilty of something. Finally, he stopped at the driver's side, lips curling into a smirk. "License and registration." Derrick nodded, retrieving the documents from the glove box. His movements were steady but slower than most, the mechanics of his disability visible even in small tasks. Thompson's eyes narrowed as if interpreting Derrick's deliberate pace as defiance. "Step out of the vehicle," the officer barked suddenly. Derrick blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, officer, but I can't. I'm disabled, my wheelchair is in the trunk. If you'd like, I can." "Out of the car," Thompson repeated, voice rising, tone laced with impatience and disdain. The street, once quiet, now held a heavy silence. A passerby walking their dog slowed, sensing the tension. Derrick's pulse quickened, but he kept his voice even. "Sir, I'm not refusing. I physically can't get out without my chair. If you'll allow me to explain." But Thompson wasn't listening. His jaw tightened, his hand resting near his holstered weapon. To him, Derrick's disability wasn't an explanation, it was an excuse. And in that moment, what had begun as a routine drive home twisted into the start of a nightmare that would shake the entire community. Derrick's explanation hung in the air, reasonable and calm, but Officer Thompson's scowl deepened. The officer leaned closer to the open window, his voice sharp and cutting. "Don't play games with me. I said get out of the car. Now." Derrick tightened his grip on the steering wheel, steadying himself. He had dealt with ignorant remarks before, but this was different. This was authority weaponized, a demand impossible for him to meet. "Officer," Derrick began carefully, "I'm not refusing your order. I just need to retrieve my wheelchair from the trunk. If you'll allow me a moment." But Thompson slammed a hand against the roof of the car, the loud thud making Derrick flinch. A couple across the street, walking hand in hand, stopped and stared. Phones started to appear, curious witnesses quietly documenting what felt like the start of something ugly. "Don't tell me how to do my job," Thompson barked. His voice carried across the street, drawing even more eyes. "Step out or I'll drag you out." The words stung more than Derrick wanted to admit. Drag me out, as though his body was a burden, a problem to be yanked like baggage from a trunk. He inhaled deeply, forcing calm into his tone. "Sir, please, I physically cannot exit the vehicle without my wheelchair. If you'd give me just one." That was all Thompson needed to hear. He yanked open the driver's door, looming over Derrick like a storm cloud ready to break. His hand shot toward Derrick's arm, gripping tightly. Pain flared instantly, Derrick's muscles tensing under the force. "Non-compliant," Thompson muttered loud enough for onlookers to hear, as if building a narrative for the phone's now recording. "Resisting. I'm not resisting," Derrick protested, his voice loud but still steady. "I'm trying to explain. Out of the car," Thompson bellowed again, tugging at Derrick's arm. The awkward angle and the officer's brute strength made Derrick's body twist painfully. A gasp rose from the growing crowd. Someone shouted, "He said he's disabled. Leave him alone." But Thompson ignored them. To him, Derrick wasn't a man with dignity. He was an obstacle to control, a performance to prove his dominance. He tugged again, harder this time, Derrick's seatbelt straining against the pull. "Sir, please." Derrick's voice cracked under the pressure. "My wheelchair. Just let me." The officer cut him off with another bark. "Save it. You think your sob story makes you above the law? Not on my watch." Humiliation burned hotter than the pain in Derrick's arm. Each tug, each word, stripped away not only his comfort but his humanity. Around him, strangers bore witness, their eyes wide, their voices rising in outrage. Phones captured every cruel second, evidence of a man too stubborn to see the injustice in front of him. And as Thompson jerked Derrick again, the fragile line between control and brutality snapped, setting the stage for an incident that would end far more than a routine traffic stop. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, phones raised like lanterns capturing every second. Derrick's pleas had already made it clear he wasn't resisting, but Officer Thompson seemed determined to escalate. His jaw was clenched, his grip unrelenting, his tone dripping with disdain. "Final warning," Thompson barked, pulling harder on Derrick's arm. "Get out of the car." "I can't." Derrick's voice cracked, a raw mixture of pain and desperation. "I physically cannot. My wheelchair is in the trunk." But Thompson wasn't listening. With one swift motion, he unbuckled Derrick's seatbelt and tried to haul him out of the car. Derrick's body twisted unnaturally, his legs collapsing uselessly beneath him. A sharp cry escaped his lips as his shoulder scraped against the metal frame of the car door. The crowd gasped. One woman screamed, "Stop! He's disabled." Another voice, male and angry, shouted, "We're recording this." Thompson turned briefly toward the bystanders, his face red with fury. "Back off. This is police business," he snapped. But the cameras kept rolling, the truth capturing itself frame by frame. Derrick, struggling to steady his breath, managed to speak through the pain. "Why are you doing this? I've done nothing wrong." Thompson yanked him again, forcing him halfway out of the seat. Derrick's legs dangled helplessly, his body weight straining against the officer's grip. For a man already used to navigating a world that underestimated him, this moment was its cruelest reflection. Suddenly, a young man from the crowd stepped forward. He wore a hoodie, his phone still recording in one hand. "That's enough," he shouted. "He told you he can't walk. Everyone here heard it." "You're assaulting him." Thompson's eyes narrowed. "Step back or you'll be arrested too." But the young man didn't move. Neither did the others. A wave of voices rose in protest. "Let him go. This is abuse. We've got everything on camera." The shift in power was palpable. For the first time, Thompson's grip faltered. He looked around, realizing dozens of eyes and recording devices were on him. His performance of authority was unraveling. Derrick, still pinned awkwardly between the seat and Thompson's hand, spoke quietly but firmly. "This isn't about the law. This is about you. About your need to humiliate me." The words hit harder than any shove. Thompson's nostrils flared, but the truth of it lingered in the air, undeniable. Finally, with a shove that made Derrick wince, the officer released him. Derrick slumped back into his seat, his breathing ragged. The crowd erupted in outrage, some yelling for justice, others calling 911, demanding a supervisor. Thompson muttered into his radio, his face pale now, his arrogance shaken. The power he wielded so carelessly minutes before had slipped through his fingers, exposed under the relentless glare of cameras and community anger. What he didn't know yet was that this single act, this cruel decision to target a disabled man, had already gone viral. And by morning, it wouldn't just be the neighborhood watching. It would be the entire nation. By the next morning, the video had already swept across social media. Clips of Derrick's strained voice, calmly insisting he couldn't exit his car without his wheelchair, were played side by side with footage of Officer Thompson yanking at his arm. The hashtags #JusticeForDerrick and #DisabledAndDignified trended within hours. Local news anchors replayed the scene in loops, while national outlets picked up the story before noon. Public outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Civil rights advocates demanded accountability. Disability rights groups marched in solidarity, their voices uniting around one clear truth. Derrick had been criminalized not for wrongdoing, but for existing in a body that required accommodation. By midday, the police chief held a press conference. His expression was tight, his tone heavy with forced authority. "We are aware of the disturbing video circulating online," he began. "An internal investigation is underway, and Officer Brad Thompson has been placed on administrative leave." But the crowd of reporters wasn't satisfied. Questions flew. Why wasn't Derrick helped instead of harassed? Why did the officer ignore clear evidence of his disability? How many other complaints have been ignored until now? The chief's vague answers only fueled further suspicion. Meanwhile, Derrick lay in a hospital bed, his shoulder bruised and his spirit tested, but his resolve unbroken. Friends and strangers visited with flowers, letters, and quiet words of encouragement. Nurses wheeled in laptops so Derrick could see the outpouring of support online. His face softened at the sight, not out of vanity, but out of relief. Finally, his voice had been heard, amplified by thousands who refused to look away. Within days, the investigation revealed Thompson's history. A string of complaints buried under paperwork, each one dismissed with excuses. The video had cracked open a dam, and now everything poured out. A week later, the city convened a public hearing. Derrick, seated in his wheelchair, testified with dignity before officials, community leaders, and cameras. His voice was steady, his words sharp yet measured. "I did not ask for this spotlight," he said, "but I refuse to let what happened to me fade into silence. I was treated as less than human because of my disability, and I know I am not the first. If we do not demand better, I will not be the last." The applause that followed was thunderous. People rose to their feet, tears in their eyes, not just for Derrick's pain, but for his courage. By the end of the month, Officer Thompson was dismissed from the force. His badge, once a symbol of authority, now marked his downfall. And as for Derrick, though the scars on his body would heal slowly, his spirit remained unbroken. He returned to his life, but now carried the role of advocate. His story a reminder that dignity should never be negotiable. What had begun as a cruel attempt to strip away his humanity ended instead as a testament to it. A moment when truth, captured and shared, ended a career built on arrogance and gave rise to a call for justice that no one could ignore.